The security of our nation and our border is first and foremost the responsibility of our president. I came down here because I heard of the crisis. It's more than a crisis. This is a human heartbreak. The sad part about all of this, it didn't have to happen. This crisis is created by the presidential policies of this new administration. There's no other way to claim it than a Biden border crisis. Every part of what we sat and talked to, we learned more of how it was created. Congressman Jimenez talked to a family from Honduras, asked how long they've been traveling, 22 days. Just in coincidence of the actions taken by President Biden of why people think they could come here and break the law. We went through a new facility that was built just more than a year ago. They built it with a capacity they thought they could never meet, 1,040 people to be processed. Today broke that record. Today they're beyond capacity. They're having to build into the parking lot a makeshift facility. Even though the U.S. Congress just passed a $1.9 trillion bill, not $1 in there to help them. It's taking away the operation cost for the border to be protected. But for all these children, they're unaccompanied that's sitting in there. There's 120 border agents that are now inside that unit that are not on the border protecting us when a surge is coming. As we went up to Monument 3, speaking to the men and women on the front lines, they catch from 100 to 200 people a night. As we talk to the medical units, and as I tell you, as not as a member of Congress, but as a father of a son and a daughter, and you look in the eyes of these children, they came unaccompanied. They tell the story of a 1, a 3, and a 5-year-old holding their hands, walking up to an agent with no parents, no adults in sight. Who brought them? When you talk to the medical units, talk about the percentage that get trafficked, that get harmed along the way. Who knows what dangers and who doesn't make it? All because the policies of our president has changed and told them something different. Told them to risk their lives and broke families apart. We are better as a nation than this. This is about the safety and security of our border. But it's also about the opportunity that Americans want and the prosperity. I know the president's going to travel this week. This is where he should bring Air Force One. This is where he should look the people in the eye. This is where he should talk to the border agents and let them know that this is beyond a crisis. He can continue to deny it, but the only way to solve it is to first admit what he has done. And if he will not reverse action, it's going to take congressional action to do it. And that's why we're here. We want to find solutions. Before we even came here, I sent a letter to the president to work together to solve this problem. I thought maybe he would reach out. Maybe he'd set an appointment. He doesn't even acknowledge a letter, let alone a crisis that his policies created. So we will work together, across the aisle, within our own party, because we know the solutions that it will take. When you talk about what's coming across, I just left a few border agents and I asked them, who are the individuals you're catching? Yeah, they're from Central America. But you know who else? Iran, Yemen, Sri Lanka. When I walked through the facility, there's more Haitians than any other nationality I saw. And why were they coming now? You asked the border agents, they were shocked themselves because they're being released into the country. When I talked to the doctor to see when they're being tested for COVID, when they get out, more than 10% are testing positive. Well, you're being stored together. In a time when the president will keep our country closed, the one maybe we have hope for a 4th of July to get together just with our family, How much spread of COVID is he creating every single day by his policies along this border? It's wrong, and it has to end, and it needs to end now. With that, I want to introduce the Republican leader of the Homeland Committee, John Katko. Former, what were you, prosecutor?
Organized crime prosecutor here.
Organized crime prosecutor right here in this community.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. In fact, Kevin's right. I just lived right up the road on Sunland Park Drive as a federal organized crime prosecutor back in the 90s. And I was charged with going after the drug cartels. And I had a fundamental understanding then, and I do now, that the cartels know when to exploit the southern border, and they're doing it now masterfully. And they're doing it because President Biden rolled back a lot of the orders of the previous administration that were working. One of the perhaps most reprehensible things I've heard in a long time is Nancy Pelosi and some in the administration saying that this is caused by pent-up demand from the previous administration. There's always a pent-up demand for crime. Crossing the border illegally is illegal, and so we shouldn't accommodate that pent-up demand. And they seem to be signaling that we should. And here's what's happening. There's no question, this trip has confirmed it for me. There is indeed disorder at the border by executive order. No question about it. We went first to a detention facility, $48 million to build. They're spending tens of thousands of dollars a day just to feed this surge. They're spending tens of thousands of dollars more a day to clothe them, to transfer them. All this money is being taken away from things we're doing here in the country that could benefit our citizens. It is so bad from a financial standpoint for Border Patrol that, as Kevin alluded to, they're taking money from the future payments down the road later in the year of Border Patrol salaries and Border Patrol pensions just to try and pay for the surge that's going on right now that was caused by this president. And they're hoping for supplemental, but that supplemental doesn't come. I don't know how we're going to even pay these guys. What are we doing? Right? What are we doing? Another thing, they are not testing these individuals. We saw hundreds of people in there today. Not one of them's had a COVID test. And they're transferring to other places without COVID tests. Border Patrol agents have only been inoculated at 50 to 60% at the most right now. They're exposed every day to this. And this is something that the president has caused with this surge. So then we went over to Monument 3, right around the hill here. And we saw firsthand what was going on. And Kevin alluded to what's going on. Hundreds of people a day coming across. We saw gaps in the wall that made no sense. They were almost done, and on January 20th at midnight, they were instructed to stop. And now we have vulnerabilities because of that, and they're exploiting those vulnerabilities. And perhaps worse than that, 120 agents that guard that area that's now vulnerable are being pulled away to go deal with feed and clothe these kids coming across. And by the way, when kids come across, if you don't think the drug traffickers are doing it, think again. Most of them have a piece of tape across their shirt with instructions on who they are and where they're going and what information to get and what they need to do. So that's very organized. And they're paying a lot of money per child to get them across, right? The last thing I'll tell you is something that very much concerns me as a Homeland Security ranking member. People they've caught in the last few days over there in Sector 3 or Monument 3 have been on the terror watch list. Individuals that they have on the watch list for terrorism are now starting to exploit the southern border. We need to wake up. We need to understand, listen, Mr. President Biden, you're an okay guy. Why don't you just admit you made a mistake with this policy and go back to the way it was and keep America safe for all of us? And use that money that we're wasting down here on our American citizens. The door should not be open, and we should have immigration the right way. And with that, I'd like to invite my good friend, Tony Gonzalez from the Homeland Security Committee up here. Tony's from Texas, and he's going to talk to you more. Thank you very much.
Today is about the men and women in green. Our Border Patrol agents are doing God's work, keeping our border safe. And for that, I want them to know we have your back. I am grateful that, Leader McCarthy and other members of the congressional delegation made it down today. For too long, our border communities have been forgotten. That has changed. That is changing today. We have your back. America is a nation of immigrants. We are also a nation of laws. Border security and legal immigration go hand in hand. We are a compassionate people. We do not want to see overcrowding in our spaces. We do not want to see families make dangerous treks across countries that they don't understand and put themselves at risk. What we want to do is we want to attract the best and the brightest that this world has to offer, and we want them to come in a legal fashion. And we can do that. But that first starts by supporting our border security. Border security and legal immigration go hand in hand. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to now turn it over to August Pfluger, my neighbor to the south.
Folks, thank you all for being here. The fact that the Biden administration and President Biden himself will not admit that this is a crisis is a shame. Even those in his administration and HHS have admitted that we have a refugee crisis. They have set several additional housing locations, one in my district where 700 people were moved overnight with no notification to local elected people, no notification to the sheriffs or law enforcement or the judges. And overnight, 700 unaccompanied people, unaccompanied children, have been moved into Midland, Texas. The Biden administration and his policies have resulted in some winners and losers. The winners are the human traffickers who know that because we don't have a secure border, that they can move these children. And when we looked in their eyes today, what we saw was children who were being taken advantage of, exploited on that 22-day trip. And not only that, but the fact that we have folks who are on the terrorist watch list that are being moved into this country illegally, that are taking advantage of these bad policies, that know because we don't have a strong, secure border, that the border wall construction has stopped and been halted about 22 days ago. Now they have something to take advantage of. We implore the Biden administration to come visit, to see what their policies have done to these children, what they have done to make our country less secure. I'd like to introduce Congressman Joyce from Ohio.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to review the border situation. The Interior Department controls 40% of the border, and unfortunately the backlog that has been created, we've been managing over the last few years to knock down, is now being exacerbated because the things that were being done on the wall when this was all stopped are not being done anymore. What is important is that there's a 173% increase in the last month of people coming across the border, kids coming across the border. It's a humanitarian crisis, it's a legal crisis, and it needs to be fixed and addressed. Some of the agents were just telling us that as a member of the opioid caucus, I could tell you that with fentanyl coming across this border, more kids are going to die. We're killing our own kids. We're making it unsafe for those kids who are making the voyage up here. And why? Because we don't tell them that we are a country of immigrants, but we are also a country of laws. And those two don't have to contradict each other. Thank you. And I introduce my friend Chuck Fleischman from the Interior, or from Homeland.
Good afternoon. I'm Chuck Fleischman. I am the appropriator, chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Appropriations. I want to speak with y'all today. I'm sorry, I'm the ranking member. Optimism. I'm a little bit shaken today. I've made several trips to the border, McAllen, Rio Grande sector, here in El Paso, with the past administration in regard to my capacity. But today, we are seeing a crisis. Now, a crisis such as pandemic is large. It has immediate concerns, it has long-term concerns. But this crisis at the border, which was incentivized, President Biden and his minions created an environment causing this surge. That's what's wrong about this. Talk to the migrants. They've been told, come on, come across from all over a host of countries. What does that mean? Human costs, humanitarian costs. It means complete failure here at the border. It means threats to the United States. My counterparts have talked about a lot of the different specifics, but let me be clear about this. What we need to do is no more euphemisms from this White House, no more political maneuvering by Pelosi and Schumer to try to call it a challenge. It is a crisis with dire, multiple problems involved with this. What we need to do is act now, act as Americans, act united. And I will close with this. As the appropriator on Homeland Security, we know they're going to come with what? A supplement, a request for more money. We've got to put those resources where they're needed. But just think of it. But for the actions of this president, which he will not acknowledge, he's created this crisis. We have got to stop it. We've got to come together as Americans, not just Republicans and Democrats, not just members of the administration or the House and Senate, but as Americans, and deal with this. Thank you. My good friend Clay Higgins from Louisiana.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. It's unfortunate that we as a nation have allowed this crisis to develop. And it began last year when then candidate Biden continuously messaged that he was going to weaken law enforcement missions on the border, stop construction of the wall, create a pathway to citizenship or amnesty for illegal residents that were already here. The cartels were listening. Most of you know that the cartel's infrastructure is incredibly well developed and they are very well funded. So they began getting ready, man. They were hoping for a Biden victory. And on January the 20th, Joe Biden was inaugurated as our president. So I'm gonna ask President Biden to please pay attention, because I'm talking straight to you now, sir. Allow us an audience with you. You have been misled. The policies that you have signed into effect are injuring the American citizens you serve and endangering the children of God that are making this trek to our southern border under incredibly dangerous circumstances. Allow the voice of reason to enter the White House. You took charge of this country on January the 20th, but on the very same day, you gave control of our border to the cartels. You can fix this thing working with us. If America is paying attention, and I believe they are, your phone's going to start ringing. I implore you, good sir, let us in. We can fix this thing. It's beyond a crisis at the border. It's a threat to our republic. And you, Mr. President, have a responsibility to listen to the citizens that we serve. God bless you one and all. Thank you for being here and reporting this. Madam?
Hi. Thank you for being here. I'm Representative Yvette Harrell from New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District. So the El Paso sector, where we just visited today, serves the district that I represent. So I'm grateful for Leader McCarthy and all of these colleagues of mine coming here to understand what we're facing. And I don't want to repeat everything they've said, but I do want to let you know that we have introduced a policy that is very effective for the Border Patrol. And they just told us repeatedly, Title 42 is helping. But if this president takes that away, then it opens the floodgates even more so. This Title 42 allows our Border Patrol agents to process on the border and expel those that are coming here illegally because we are under pandemic conditions. And I know there's not one of you in this crowd that hasn't been impacted by the COVID-19. Maybe know somebody who passed away, somebody who's sick, somebody who is alone in the hospital, somebody who lost a job, closed a business. We've all been impacted by COVID-19. And for our president to think opening the southern border to allow those coming in, and you just heard it, that are infected with or have been exposed to COVID makes no sense at all. So this flatten the curve and all the work we've done as a country to get our kids educated, open up our economies, and ensure that we are doing the right thing to overcome the pandemic, opening the southern border makes no sense. We've just taken 3 steps forward and 10 giant steps backwards. So thank you for being here and covering this. It is a humanitarian crisis, but it's also a public health crisis, and Americans are just as much at risk as those making the trek over. So thank you for covering this today. And with that, my friend, Representative Salazar from Florida.
Thank you very much, Leader, for inviting us to come to the border. My name